This is What's Wild in New Hampshire by wildlife biologist Eric Orff. Hey, I'm at New Hampshire Audubon, the McLean Center here in Concord with Carol Foss. Carol Foss and I go back a ways when I was at Fish and Game for many years, and she's still at New Hampshire Audubon. She has made history at New Hampshire Audubon, worked on some awesome projects over the years. We're going to ask Carol, how long you been in Audubon? Let's talk about some of the projects you worked on over the years. Come to mind after the fire, so after whatever, 83, when Fish and Game was on Store Street, the DOT building, I think you and Flip put the metal around the first osprey nest or something like that. It was around that time, around the early to mid 80s at most. I remember some work on ospreys that you were doing. And I know you were instrumental in establishing a threatened species list. I think a lot of that was in your hands. So how long you been around here at Audubon? And let's talk about some of those projects. You know, my memory is not what it once was, and I'm counting on you.
Well, neither is mine, but maybe between the two of us,
we'll bubble something up.
Together.
Come on, Ginkgo, kick in.
So I've been at New Hampshire Audubon since 1977. I ran the Paradise Point Nature Center for actually 2 summers in 75 and 76, and then I started
So actually 75. Wow.
Here at headquarters in 1977, overseeing education programs. And then in 1980, when New Hampshire passed the Endangered Species Conservation Act.
Which you probably helped get passed, I'd be willing to bet.
The organization did.
Yes,
I wasn't personally involved in that, I don't think.
Well, New Hampshire Audubon, but everybody here kind of helps.
Yes. So we worked with the Harris Center and Fish and Game to put together a day-long meeting at the Harris Center and brought together all the specialists on fish and reptiles and amphibians and birds and mammals to discuss what species would be appropriate for a threatened and endangered species.
So that was about, what year was that, you think?
I think that would have been probably 80 or 80, I think.
Okay.
Because in order to qualify for federal Section 6 endangered species funding, the state needed to have a list of threatened and endangered species and have the law. So we had the law, and then we had to produce a list.
Basically backfill it. Yep.
So we put together a report coming out of this meeting and submitted that to Fish and Game. And then I think the director had the responsibility for approving a list.
All right.
I think it was the director and not the commission, but that was a few years ago.
Yep.
So subsequently, we were able to qualify for Section 6 funding, but there was no money available at Fish and Game
to do the match.
So Audubon entered into an agreement with Fish and Game whereby we provided the match, and the department kind of passed through the funding for projects with a small administrative cut.
Yep. They will do that.
So, yeah, that was a long time ago.
And then the list has been revised. Some animals, tell us about the animals that have come off the list. Some have come off. Haven't they?
Yes, but I'm not up on that.
Okay. Well, are eagles off the list now, kind of, sort of? From one category to another or something? Yeah.
They've certainly been downlisted.
Yep.
I think ospreys are off the list entirely. You're going to have to cut this out because I really don't remember.
Well, I'm not going to cut anything out because I don't. But anyways, our memories are what they are, and that's what we go with. Yes. Today, I wanted to tell you, there's almost a dozen ospreys when I was at the Milford Hatchery loading trucks The ospreys are abundant there today. The
Well,
guy said, well,
that's-
there's 10 here today, and I can guarantee you there'll be 12 tomorrow. So yes, they have found a place to stop for lunch.
That's interesting because I worked down at the hatchery probably 5 or 6 years ago, testing some LED lights
Okay.
to see what their deterrence effect was
Okay.
on ospreys, and
Huh.
we tested them at a
So-
mussel farm in Casco Bay
Okay.
on eiders,
Huh.
and at the Milford Hatchery on ospreys and great blue herons, and down at Cape May at a raptor banding
So
station.
trying non-lethal ways to
Right.
protect,
to deter.
to deter, protect crops
Yeah.
and whatnot. Yep. Huh.
So
So I remember you and Flip, I think when the first ospreys were found or known up at Umbagog, you went up there and put some metal around the tree or something. It seems like that was your doing.
we had a running argument over whether it was mammalian predation
Okay.
or owl predation that was
Affecting the nest.
killing the nestlings.
Okay.
And finally, I said, well, you can sort of guess who was on which side of that argument. And finally, I said, well, let's go and put out some predator guards
Yep.
and solve it
See what
one
happens.
way or the other. So the first tree that we got to was a big old dead pine in Leonard Marsh. And you could see the claw marks going
Yes,
up
you
the
can.
tree.
Raccoons leave sign.
So that was the end of that debate. And
How many osprey nests were there then?
well, in the first year we were doing surveys, I think we found 6.
6.
And then we got into aerial surveys and
Yep. Okay.
extended our range a bit. And I think we had 11 or 12 for quite a while.
How many
But-
now?
I don't know how many there are. That would be a good Chris Martin question.
Yep.
But they are now in every watershed in the state.
Okay.
And they were
I
pretty
think there's
much
like 50
limited
nests, something like that now. Yeah.
to the
yeah.
Androscoggin
Okay,
at
then.
the time.
Okay.
So just the increase in distribution has been pretty dramatic.
Yeah. Wow.
And a lot of that can be attributed to the residues from the DDT era
Okay.
getting. I would not take credit for the installation of predator guards being responsible for
Okay.
the increase in the osprey population.
So it was a combination of factors, that being one of them. You helped.
Well,
We
we'd
always
like
like to
to
think
think
we're
so.
helping, right?
We'd like to think so.
Yeah. And how about some other species that you worked with? Are there any more success stories off the top of your head? Have you worked on the terns out the Isles of Shoals?
That was Diane DeLuca.
Yeah.
That was really going on while I was at the University of Maine.
Okay,
So I
all right.
really wasn't mixed up in that.
I know you've been working on
But-
the rusty blackbirds.
That's a
and-
recent thing, but I want to tell the story about the bald eagle orphan that was fostered out at Umbagog.
Okay.
Because as you're probably aware, a pair of bald eagles came back 40 years to the year after the last known pair nested on Umbagog and
Right.
nested in the same tree.
And the Wildlife Division had a trip up there where we went from a distance and observed that nest for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So that had to have been like in 83, 82. That's my guess.
that's,
mid-80s.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
In any event, we had an observer up there kind of monitoring
Okay,
the
yep.
nest on a daily basis. And one day I got a call from her that they weren't at the nest, the chick was gone, and she was on her way to Conway to get climbing equipment to go up and see what had happened. So I immediately called Paul Nickerson, who was
Fish and Wildlife.
At the Fish and Wildlife Service, the endangered species specialist at the regional office, and told him what was going on. And Paul said, well, you might have her wait a bit on that climbing equipment. There's an eaglet at the Burnett Park Zoo in Syracuse, New York, that needs to be fostered out to a wild pair of eagles. And he gave me a whole list of people to call and see if you can put this together. So many phone calls later, we had put this together, and a few days later, a contingent came over from Syracuse, and we had a Dunkin' Donuts jelly bucket and ropes and a pulley, and Diane Evans, who's now out west, but who was one of our biologists at the time,
I remember Diane.
Climbed the tree and hoisted. I think we sent a camera up first, so that we could make sure the bucket wasn't going to bang into branches or anything. And several of our local friends had been out fishing early in the morning so that we could place some cut up pieces of fish on the edge of the nest in case the adults didn't come back right away. And so the fish went up, and that was also a signal to the adults that we were there with positive intention.
Okay.
And finally, the eaglet went up and went in the nest. Well, the male, as soon as Diane had climbed up, had disappeared from our view. We were on a nearby island, and the female had gone to a tree on another adjacent island and was watching the whole proceedings. Well, after Diane got down and retreated to the island with the rest of us, the female flew over the nest and took a look and went back to her perch and started to vocalize. So then the male came flying over the nest and went and sat on the branch beside the female, and I swear they talked it over. And we were all holding our breaths, and you can sort of imagine them saying, well, our chick died, but now there's this other chick in our nest. What do you think we should do about it? And eventually the female flew over to the nest tree and landed on a branch kind of just above the nest.
Yep.
And she peered down at the chick, and the chick peered up at her. And this went on for what seemed like an eternity. I'm sure it wasn't. And eventually she hopped down onto the nest and started feeding the chick with the pieces of fish that we had left there. It was
and that was that the first successful eagle nest? I mean, or what, had they nested the year before?
No, that was the first, that chick did survive to fledge.
Okay, so the first eagle that was successfully raised was an orphan here in New Hampshire. That is awesome history. I've never heard that story.
And
that
it was
is cool.
Also, I believe, the first successful fostering.
Really?
Because when it had been tried before, the nest had failed as eggs. And they had fostered a chick in.
Okay.
And the adults, I think the
Didn't
adults
take it.
killed
Okay.
it.
All right.
But this was replacing a chick, and it worked, much to our relief.
What a great story.
It was a pretty emotional
I've never heard
scene
this story before. This is awesome. But look at the history you were involved in. You helped bring eagles, an orphan eagle, to begin eagle nesting in New Hampshire. Look at that.
Well, not to begin, but to
foster.
To restore the eagle population.
Semantics.
A lot of the restoration of eagles in the Northeast was a result of the huge fostering hacking project that New York
and falcon, same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we hacked peregrines in New Hampshire.
Yep. Oh yeah.
But the eagles, there was a big eagle tenement in New York that you may remember, and that
Yep.
really helped
Okay.
repopulate the
Oh,
Northeast.
nice, nice. Wow. So many successes under your guiding hand, really.
Well,
History,
I've been
history made
fortunate-
day after day after day, right here by New Hampshire Audubon and by you.
I've been fortunate to be in the right place at the right time.
Isn't that something? I call it my serendipitous life. I mean, 99.9% of the time, it's hard work. It's that 0.5% that sometimes you just got to look up and say, here it is.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that day was one of them.
Yes, that was definitely a highlight.
Yeah, awesome.
Definitely a highlight. We
Great
also
story.
did a lot of work early on when eagles were just beginning to recover,
Yeah,
identifying areas that they were using during the winter. And in particular, we identified some habitat on around Great Bay,
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
has since been protected. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
been
Oh,
really
that's true. And the
rewarding
whole
as well.
protection of key habitat was all another thing that you were part of. Wow.
We did a lot of work on eagle wintering habitat.
Okay. Nice.
In the early years.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So many different things. What is it? 70-something pairs of eagles now? I think it's under 100, but it's not that far off.
It's crazy. I mean, the population is way larger
Yep.
than the osprey
Yep,
population.
yep. And unbelievable. A lot of hard work for many years, and it's borne fruit with the. I can't tell you how many times a week I see an eagle now. I look up, and the other day I drove up to Alton Bay to look at the ice or no ice, and a beautiful adult bald eagle just above the water the whole length. And I was just getting out of my truck, so I didn't have the camera in my hand yet, but what a magnificent sight it was to see. So I am enjoying the fruits of your hard work and the many years here at New Hampshire Audubon. Worked with many of you here. I do appreciate it. Very good, Carol.
The pair that's nesting in Canterbury,
Okay.
we can see them flying up and down the Merrimack from our living room window.
Ah, wow.
And I mean that has been a real thrill, and it was just so awesome for Flip to have
Yep,
that.
yep. Wow. Yep, nice.
So.
Awesome stories. Thank you very much. Hey, this is wildlife biologist Eric Orff for What's Wild in New Hampshire.